Hello. Today is my birthday, and I had the day off work by chance. Didn't plan it; just that's the way the roster fell. And so me and my wife and kid went over to the city, and I looked in a couple of record shops. Well, actually two, real groovy records, and where there was really nothing, an ever diminishing range of CDs in that place, which is always kind of disappointing. And then the stuff they do have is hit and miss, shall we say. And then also I went to the JB Hi-Fi branch on Queen Street, and they had a 20% off sale, 20% off all CDs, and I think as well also all records and DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff. The reason being is that actually I don't know the reason. Why would they do it anyway? Regardless, I got 20% off. And I got two CDs. Now, one of these, if you're a long time viewer of my videos, which I doubt it, I've talked about this one before, and I kind of talked about it in quite negative terms, but it's actually grown on me a lot. And yeah, so I'll just show it without blabbing about it. Devin Townsend's Power Nerd, which came out last year, the year before last, 2024. I keep saying last year meaning 2024, but then I remember what's now 2026. It's actually not technically last year, not even at all last year. This is his most recent album, I believe. He puts out so much stuff, it's hard to keep track of sometimes. And when I first heard this, I wouldn't say disappointed, I'd say I was underwhelmed. And I thought it was very kind of formulaic and unoriginal. But then the more I listened to it, the more it kind of grew on me. And that's something that a lot of Devin Townsend's work does. It grows on me. It's quite rare nowadays, at least with his later era work, because I wouldn't say this was true of his earlier work, because a lot of stuff he did with like Strapping Young Lad, I remember the first time I heard it, I kind of loved it. But with his later work, it's taken me longer to kind of get into. This was the same with the album Lightwork, where I kind of just didn't really think anything of it the first time I heard it, but then kind of over time it really grew on me, and now I listen to it and it's kind of I think it's a great album. I wouldn't say it's one of his greatest albums, but it's a quality album that I enjoy listening to. Let's open it. And this is the little thing they have. It's got like a little plastic tab here. And you've got to try and get, but I have no fingernails because I bite my fingernails, which I know a lot of people don't like seeing that. It's quite particularly ugly seeing someone with bitten fingernails. But I've bitten my fingernails since I was a kid, and I'm now in my mid-40s, so I don't imagine I'm going to stop doing that anytime soon. Power Nerd, Devin Townsend, the new studio album, featuring contributions from Darby Todd, don't know who that is, Mike Keneally, he's someone who's collaborated with Devin a lot, Jeremy Jester. Is that the guy from Hatebreed? Jeremy Jester? Was that Jamie? Jester. There's the disc. Power Nerd. A person of any gender who has, through tenacity and perseverance, turned what society may deem a weakness into a superpower. A total effing badass you. Well, am I a power nerd? I never really considered myself a nerd. I would say I didn't really fall into the nerd category in my youth because part of it was I wasn't smart enough. I think to be a nerd, you've got to kind of have some intellect, kind of an above average intellect. And I had enough, sorry, it's hard to get the book out of this. I had enough social connection with people who would be kind of considered, inverted commas, no, I wouldn't actually, I was going to say cool, but maybe they actually weren't really cool, but normal, let's say normal. I had social connection with enough normal people who weren't kind of social outcasts that I kind of avoided nerddom. Now, I'd say I have nerd qualities about me. I'm particularly socially awkward. And as much as I've tried to kind of get over that through adulthood, I've realized that I think that's just part of my brain wiring that there's nothing I can do about it. And I have kind of fixations on things like music, very beautiful nature photos in the background. So we've got the lyrics here. And also I kind of have like attachments to, I guess, kind of nerd culture, like sci-fi movies. A certain, so I didn't like Doctor Who or anything, but like Star Wars and Star Trek and Blade Runner movies, and when I was a kid, Transformers. But that's all pretty normal, isn't it? That's not particularly. And then nerdiness has kind of changed a lot now. It's kind of much more mainstream and not kind of seen. It's kind of embraced. You know, things like video games are so part of popular culture now that someone who kind of spends all their days playing video games is not considered to be a nerd. It's kind of like a 70s and 80s term, isn't it, really? Is that real, or is that kind of some sort of artificially produced photograph? I'm not sure. It's quite beautiful though. A mountain, that doesn't look real. So it's been manipulated in some way. And then we got the credits. Artwork and packaging designed by Travis Smith. Travis Smith is someone, if you look at a lot of these albums of the kind of prog metal kind of genre, you see Travis Smith's name pops up again and again. Opeth, Catatonia, Devin Townsend, a lot of those other kind of bands as well, like Leprous, Tesseract, Periphery. He's like the kind of the go-to guy for artwork and art design for those kinds of bands. And we've got these guys, the guest people. So we've got Diego Tejeda did the keyboard, Mike Keneally, Mark Camino, Jean Savoy, Tanya Ghosh, don't know who that is, and Jamie Jester. Who is this Jamie Jester guy? Because sometimes it will say such and such appears courtesy of, and it'll have like the band or the record label which they're part of, but I can't see that here. Anyway, and then the people he thanks over here, his endorsements. He talked about this album being an important, you know, when a new album comes out, Devin Townsend can be very kind of solipsistic, is that the word? Or he likes to talk about himself. And I don't mean that in a particularly negative way. I don't mean it to sound that way, because he's someone who I enjoy listening to his music, but I also enjoy listening to him talk. He's got an interesting view on life, and he's quite balanced, and he's someone who, you know, if you really enjoy someone's work, you want to hear what I do. I want to hear what they have to say about life. If someone's work affects me in such, you know, like his early, like something like Ocean Machine is an album that it's kind of like a key part of my life. And someone who produced that music, that artwork, I feel they are in touch with something. And so therefore I kind of want to hear their views on things. Now sometimes it's disappointing. Sometimes someone's music you love, and then you hear them speak and they're just absolute fucking morons. And you think, well, okay, you know, who cares? I still love their music. But at other times the person is, you know, they live up to the music. And I think Devin Townsend kind of matches that. He has some really interesting things to say. Sometimes he's quite be a little bit self-help book sounding, but also some of the things he said I've heard him say have really resonated with me over the years. Like I can really relate to what he's saying. And before this, when this came out, the interviews he gave, he talked a lot about the process of change in his life at that period. He must be in his mid-50s now. He will certainly be in his 50s. He's a bit older than I am. So he would be in his early to mid-50s. And his kid had just kind of moved out of home, gone off to university. As I think his wife had moved. They weren't divorced or anything, but she was moving somewhere for a job, and so they were living apart. I think his parents were getting old, and I think there was like sickness or death in his extended family. And he had also decided to stop touring after this album cycle, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he kind of talked about how there was just a lot of kind of flux and big changes going on in his life, and that this album reflected that. And he kind of didn't intend it in that way. For him, this was kind of almost going to be like a throwaway album, but it ended up being much more important and significant in his life and where he was. If I was to recommend any songs off this, I particularly like Jainism and Gratitude, track 4 and track 7. The song Power Nerd itself, I could take or leave. Only 11 tracks, which kind of seems like quite short for him. Usually his albums kind of go 15 plus. So yes, the other reason why I got this is because I talked about this whenever I talked about it. I repeat myself a lot, is that with certain artists, and I'll put him in this kind of club, I eventually want to buy their stuff. I want to own all the albums they've released. But when something like this is released 2 years ago or 18 months ago, I think, I don't really like it enough, or I don't want to buy it. And then the next album comes out, and this one kind of, this cycle passes and you can't find it in the stores anymore. And then you think, oh, a few years has passed, and actually you think, oh, actually I do like this, I would like to get this. And then trying to find it is hard. You know, it's not available in stores because it's hard to find in stores as it is, even when it's a new release. And then trying to find it online, the prices start going up, stupid things. Like, for example, the album Ghost, which came out in about 2011, which actually I loved at the time it was released, but I just wasn't buying CDs back then. I was off of buying physical media. I just thought, well, I'm just going to download everything for the rest of eternity. And so I never bought that album. And now if you try and find Ghost, it's really hard to find. Like if you look for online for like a new copy, you see it for stupid prices, and then you've got to get it shipped here as well, which adds 50% to the price. And then if you try and get it second hand, it's just more or less impossible. So that's another reason why I bought this, because I want to own all his work, and I don't want to lose the opportunity. That was number one. And you saw there, sorry, I didn't say the price, did I? The full price was $26.99 New Zealand, $27. So that's about $13 US, give or take. I don't know what that sounds like for you, if that sounds expensive or not. The other thing I bought, again, Devin Townsend, $31.99. This is a reissue of the 25th anniversary edition of Infinity. So if this is the 25th, when did this come out? It's come out last year, 2023. So this 25 years from 2023 was 98, I guess. This originally came out in 1998, and I've been listening to it since about the year 2000. I think I first listened to this, 2001. Downloaded Ants. I remember it was the first CD I ever heard, the first song I heard off this album, Ants. Now Infinity where did this come? Was this the first album after Ocean Machine? I believe it was. Now, the photo here on the cover, this is him in 2023. The original cover from 1998 is the same kind of pose. He's naked, but not showing anything. And he's younger. I think he's got a skullet. Has he shaved his head or has he got a skullet? Can't actually remember. Sorry, I'm actually the plastic office. But I never owned the original version of Ocean Machine. A lot of his other stuff I have owned. I owned Infinity. I owned Ocean Machine, the original one. I owned Terrier. I owned Physicist. Never owned Accelerated Evolution. But I never owned this one, the original one. There we go. That's the original cover. He's heavily receding, shall we say. And there he is there. A kind of amorphous, what do you call it when there's no gender? There's a word, but I can't think. And it's a double disc. So the original one, the original is there. I've got a photo at least, the original one there is looking very alienish with a shaved head. So he has this, I've always found that strange, well not strange, but he has this tattoo on his leg, Canada, with the Canadian flag. It seems like a bizarre thing to get tattooed on your leg. Like I could never imagine anyone in New Zealand having the word New Zealand in block font tattooed on their leg or anywhere. Some people do have the New Zealand flag, although not many people. The New Zealand flag is ugly. It's it's basically the Australian flag with one less star, red stars instead of white stars, and it's got the Union Jack. And nowadays a lot of people have complicated feelings about the Union Jack. But even without that, I've always thought New Zealand flag is just so unoriginal, you know. And some people have other New Zealand. I've seen the outline of the map. You know, imagine the two islands of New Zealand, the outline. You know, the South Island. I've seen some people that tattooed on their bodies, Kiwis and other kind of iconography, but never the actual words New Zealand. And also kind of doesn't seem to match him. He never seemed to me, like he has a song called Canada, Ontario, and he seems to like Canada. And he mentions Canada, like in that song, Juno, from the Containers compilation, what was it, kind of like the B-sides type compilation that he released. He has that line, I am Canadian, I am strong and free. So obviously he feels that Canada is part of his identity and an important part of that, but it just seems strange to have that tattooed so prominently on your body. Here he's giving, I guess, a Ford type kind of introduction to the reissue. So many years ago. I'm not going to read that. Lyrics. Got Truth, Christine, Bad Devil, War, Soul-Driven Cadillac, Ants, Wild Colonial, Boy, Life is All Dynamics, Unity, Noisy Pink Bubbles, Sit in the Mountain, Processional Love. So these are kind of some of the ones from the, what is in that one? Oh, we've got demos. You've got the Om demo, Sit in the Mountain demo, Processional, some sort of other Love Load, Hide Nowhere. So we've got live versions of Sister and Hide Nowhere from Ocean Machine, live acoustic versions, and then a demo of Man. So a lot of people consider Infinity to be one of his classics. A lot of people, I'd say, of his fans consider it to be his greatest album. I don't. I think it's a great album, but it's not his greatest album. if you listen to those podcasts that he did during COVID, he didn't do all of the album. I think he was supposed to. He said he was going to, but he didn't, which is very him. He went through, I don't know, first 10 albums or something or so, 12 albums, and he kind of did an hour podcast, or even sort of longer than an hour, probably like a 2-hour podcast outlining the lead up to the album, the recording process, and talking about the songs in general. I found the one he did on Ocean Machine particularly interesting. Learned some stuff I didn't know, and some of the ones he did are kind of the later albums as well. He talked about this one. I think in this one he was kind of at his height of his mania, and I mean that in the mental illness way. I don't know if he was diagnosed as bipolar, but then it turned out he actually wasn't. He'd been misdiagnosed. And I don't know if this was before or after this album. He actually spent some time in a mental hospital, an asylum, or whatever the term is used nowadays, and went on to medication. And he had some kind of perhaps that was triggered by his use of psychedelic substances, which again he was using quite a lot in the period leading up to this. And he talked about how he lost his mind. He kind of thought he was a god, or like a conduit of God at least, and wore only white. And I might be misremembering the timeline of this, but he seemed to be very remorseful of how he treated people during that time and how he hurt a lot of people. Like he sounded like he was so single-minded and focused on creating what he felt was like a message from God, that he would do whatever he needed to do and didn't care about who he hurt. There was like, I think he talked about the song Christine. I'm pretty sure Christine is his mum's name. And it was written for his mother. And he said to record this in the studio, he was wearing all white. And he demanded his mum be in the studio, and he held her hand in the recording booth and like sung the vocals with her there, with him looking at her, holding her hand or something, which just sounds so brutally awkward and cringeworthy. And he kind of said as much, but he was maybe not in his right mind at the time. But if you want to know more about it, yeah, I recommend those podcasts he did. I think they're available on YouTube. Now he continued doing the bit, it's behind a paywall. He's got a Patreon now. And so he produces things, but it's behind the kind of paywall, which I can understand because he's not touring anymore. And so yes, double disc, 25th anniversary of Infinity. So it's good to get it. As in I have the album, but also it's like kind of a special edition. That's kind of, I guess, 2 birds with 1 stone, maybe. And like I said, that was $31.99. So it would have been $59, but I got it for $47 because of the 20% discount. What does it say? 20% off music. Waitangi. Oh, Waitangi. Okay, that's the reason. Of course, I should know. It's coming up soon. Waitangi Day in New Zealand, which is a public holiday, and so any excuse for a sale, Christmas, Boxing Day, New Year's. Last weekend was Auckland anniversary weekend, well, you get a Monday off for that. So yeah, that's not bad. So that's basically $23 each for 2 new CDs, and I'm happy to have them. They're part of the Devin Townsend collection that I'm slowly building, or rebuilding as it may be. Maybe I'll do a video showing all those. Not all those, there's actually not that many. I've got this, Infinity, Power Nerd, Lightwork, Empath, Casualties of Cool, and then I've got Key, but without the back artwork, it's just got the cover and the disc. I've got Addicted, that's just the disc and cover only as well. I've got Physicist, same thing, only the disc and the cover. No back artwork. That's not bad. That's what 6 or 7 of his albums. Anyway, not secondhand, I know, but they are CDs. And I did buy them, and I wanted to talk about them. It's good to talk. Sometimes it's nice to talk about someone who I really love a lot, an artist because a lot of times I show CDs on here just of things that I have. I like the album, but it's not particularly someone I love. But Devin Townsend, if I were to kind of name my 5 favorite artists, artists, I would say he would be in that top 5 list. And that's kind of ever changing, but I'd say the 2 artists that always stay in it would be Soundgarden and Devin Townsend. The other 3 positions kind of are interchangeable. You know, bands like Pink Floyd, the Beatles, Opeth have moved in and out of that over the years. Boards of Canada. I'm not going to list all of them, but I could go on. But my point is that Devin's certainly one of my favourite artists. And some of his work, like I always say again and again, the album Ocean Machine is kind of some of my favourite music ever created by a human on Earth, even though he's a bit of an alien. We'll leave it there. Happy birthday to me. Doesn't feel like a birthday because it never does when you're old, does it? Maybe that's a blessing, because if you dwell on it too much, you can be a little bit depressing as you move slowly but unstoppably into middle age and all that brings. All right, see you later. Thank you for watching.